welcome to Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Gavin here with secrets of longevity.com. So this is a video response to not any particular article or video or YouTube comment out there, which would normally be what I'm doing in a response video, but this is more of a response to the general atmosphere of this topic that is often talked about by the particular group I'm responding to. So who I'm responding to is the general group of MGTOWs, or men going their own way. That's the acronym for that, or MGTOW as they call themselves, as well as men's rights activists. Now, first, before you think, oh, I'm some crazy feminist attacking these groups, to give a bit of background on myself and my stance on these topics that are often talked about by these groups, I'm generally actually quite in line with what they have to say. I don't identify by that label specifically because I don't like labels unless it's something that you're inherently born with. When it comes to feminism or MGTOW or men's right activism, I think there is, things within those both camps that can be analyzed with reason and logic. So, in my view, it's much better to apply that and if anything, give yourself the label of a rationalist. And on many topics, that group, or those groups, the MGTOWs and men's rights activists, tend to be a little more correct on, when you look at the facts and evidence on whatever it is they're talking about, than the feminists. There's a lot more emotional vitriol within modern internet feminism, or third wave feminism. Now, I don't want to make it a debate about that. The topic I'm responding to specifically about these groups, which I think they're actually incorrect on, is marriage. Now, this is much more specific to MGTOWs in that they advocate abandoning all sort of relationships beyond just day-to-day interactions out in public with women. And that's due to their perception of how women treat men. And there's a lot within that to unpack, so I'm not going to be addressing that. I'm just talking about this one aspect of marriage and relationships in the modern world. And yes, there are injustices. Just to go over them briefly, it's things like in divorce, there's the resultant occurrence of a man having to pay for a woman's life just in general, which is called alimony. It, as far as I know, only exists in the US. It might exist in other cultures that aren't Western cultures, but out of Canada, UK, parts of Europe, and the US is the only one that has it. And it made sense at a time when a woman who got divorced was a very rare occurrence, and she was likely unable to get married after that, and it was before women could have much sway in the workplace in terms of fending for themselves economically. So yeah, before no-fault divorce, meaning divorce without any specific reason, there was divorce for reason, such as infidelity within a marriage, whether it's the man or the woman. That was grounds for divorce. So what should have happened after women were more and more capable of surviving on their own, economically speaking, and once no-fault divorce came through, then alimony should have been struck down, because it doesn't make sense at that point. Marriage is a contract. It's as if you're having a business contract with another individual, and there's no business contract on earth that says, if I choose to fire you, you're entitled to continued pay for me to support you. If I'm the business owner, I hire someone, and I need to fire them, there's nothing that enforces them continuing to get paid for me no longer wanting them in my business. So a marriage where one individual is making all the money and the other is being employed, we're talking in metaphors, it's not obviously specifically only economical in a marriage, but the contribution of labor differs in that sense, and the woman takes care of the home, raises children, etc. Talking before no-fault divorce came into effect. And so yeah, that made sense in terms of upholding the social structure. So that's a long explanation on that, but alimony exists in the US. It makes marriage to modern men look extremely unattractive. So why hasn't this been struck down? Well, it's arguable that feminism, in its modern sense, is looking to expand and gain equality and ground in areas where there's not equality of outcome, but they want to hold on to and reserve the benefits they have in other aspects of life. Now, the other aspect that's up for a question is the divorce itself. There's still a lot of people who have the male making most of the income in a marriage, And when divorce occurs, they split all assets by 50%. Now, it makes sense that two individuals who are living together, and from that point on, from when they get married, would split everything that they made after the marriage. Now, there's people who go into marriage with some assets, but as far as I know, depending on the country, that always gets split up as well. You actually have to have some sort of prenuptial agreement to say, we're only going to divide everything starting now, or I have this high-powered job and I have a reputation that's built up from before I married you, so if we do get divorced at some point in the future, you're only going to get 45% or 30% of all our assets, or 20%, whatever it happens to be, depending on the couple's unique situation. Now, that right there should tell you how men today can deal with alimony. You can simply ask your partner for a prenuptial agreement to eliminate any chance of having to pay out and support them should you get divorced down the road. You're not expecting that. Anyone who gets married obviously believes they're going to be married for their whole life. At least that's what we hope people believe when they're getting married, because that's the intention and whole idea behind it. But this is the major reasoning behind MGTOW type people's rejection of marriage, is that there's no way to avoid these things. Well, this is something that only exists in the US, and if it's a passionate enough reason for you, ask that your partner understand this, and this is a condition for you getting married. Some people think it's too extreme to ask for a prenuptial agreement, but if you have the reason and logic behind your stance on that, it shouldn't be that difficult to ask. Because you're with someone because they understand and love you, so they know this is something that you're passionate about. You can speak logically and explain things, and if they're not able to understand that, then that's a reason that you wouldn't want to be getting married to them in the first place, because they're incapable of logical, reasonable thought. So to me, that just strikes down this whole notion that we should avoid marriage specifically for those reasons. Now, there's a whole assortment of other reasons that I've seen paraded around as supposedly justifying that people not marry. So one of them is the idea that, and actually it's a fact, that about 1 in 10 children who grow up believing who their father is their father, actually has a different biological father. So this obviously indicates there's a very high rate that's not spoken about of infidelity, where women are getting impregnated by someone they're not married to, but using the husband as their meal ticket to raise their family. So this is the old saying, alpha fucks for beta bucks. Now, 10% sounds like a very high amount, but really it's just 1/10. So that means 9 out of 10 marriages are successful in the sense that the kids that the couple are having do belong to the father who believes they're his kids. But yes, that 1 in 10 number seems big because society hasn't acknowledged it. And this spans across many different cultures too. So this is of course bigger than just Western society. But again, if you are in a loving dynamic and you have that connection that you built up and you're developed as a human being, there should be no reason that you would fall in that 1 in 10 category. And in fact, I would say through consciously bringing awareness to this statistic, people in general can improve their relationships. Women are going to have to fix this in themselves as a group if they want to have any integrity, ethically speaking, in the future, because genetic testing is getting very common. 23andMe and tests like this. And there's a lot of stories already out where people discover that their father isn't the real father through this testing. A family all gets it done. The mother might be nervous in the back of her head, and they find out that the kids aren't theirs, and it is pretty devastating to a family. But that's the reality of the situation. So getting this out there and people acknowledging that is a good thing, and hopefully it evolves people's ethics and morality to the point where this doesn't happen anywhere near to the degree that it currently does. So that 1 in 10 figure doesn't mean you should abandon marriage altogether. It means that you should be hyper vigilant about discussing these types of things with your partner, being more conscious of whether you have a deep connection with your partner and that they're an ethical person, to whether or not they would do this to you. An important thing is to not have your partner be on birth control when you meet them and through the beginning stages of your marriage until you want to have kids. There's actually not information that suggests further back in time whether this 1 in 10 ratio existed beyond what we currently have alive today. These are modern studies. But perhaps before the pill existed, this wasn't anywhere near as big of a deal. So what happens with the pill is women who are on the pill, they meet someone they like, they have a relationship, they remain on the pill through the relationship, they eventually get married, they are building their careers, they don't decide to have kids yet, 1, 2, 3, however many years into the marriage, the woman goes off the pill and her hormones change. What she's attracted to in terms of pheromones has changed. So because she's been on the pill, she's attracted to a different type of male, and all of a sudden she's attracted to, at least during her peak fertility periods, she's attracted to a much more alpha type of male, to the point where she's willing to risk everything she's built up to get impregnated by one and then have the other male raise her kids. So as a male, what you can do is, if you meet someone and you think they're eligible for marriage, insist that they go off the pill before you propose to them, so that you can actually see if you are genuinely compatible when she's going through her normal cycles of hormonal changes. So yeah, that's another big one that the MGTOW people talk about, which is easily countered with just analyzing it and understanding human biology and having faith in the ability to actually connect with someone. One of the last and big issues that are on men's minds who adhere to this idea of MGTOW is that they look to nature and they see very few animals having monogamous long-term connections and raising kids in that way. So this is a bit of an appeal to nature, and it doesn't pan out in humans, as I'll be linking to actually give some reference for these claims I'm making. But yeah, the basic idea is that you see a whole assortment of animals having a more R-type selection for procreation. So there's K selection and R selection for fertility and procreation, and it exists on a spectrum. R-type selection is that spray and pray mentality of, a fish goes out, lays 1,000 eggs, and a male that fights for territory comes along and sprays a cloud of sperm over it, and it's the father of like 1,000 fish that all then go out. There's very little parental roles with the fish. It's high numbers, low quality parenting. The fish are left to fend for themselves as soon as they hatched. On the other side of the spectrum with K selection theory is high investment, low numbers of kids. So the further up the order of mammals you go, the greater the time that generally occurs with the parental role that occurs. So you look to bears, various types of cloven-footed animals and things like that. All these higher order mammals, they spend a certain amount of time around with their offspring after they're born, raising them. You get further still, dolphins and chimpanzees and things like that, and it gets longer still. Humans are at the furthest end of this, and that is because humans are born basically still in gestation. They're not finished development. They can't fend for themselves at birth. They need a substantial amount, compared to every other animal species, of being raised to be healthy. Now, how did this occur, evolutionarily speaking, to such an extreme extent that when we look to everything else on the spectrum, it generally goes down the order of sophistication of the animals? Well, it's actually pair bonding that's selected for this. So link number 1 below is just a study and paper that explains this in more depth. And some of the longest estimates are around 2 million, but definitely going back 500,000 years is when humans began to really increase the amount of time they spent raising their kids. So going back 2 million years, that's not that long after humans began eating meat. They began hunting and cooking and eating the majority of their calories from meat around 2.6 million years ago. So 2 million years, as the brains were developed in children and successive generations by increased dietary calories and increased animal fats and things like that. This meant that kids were born with bigger skulls, and they needed more time because of that huge brain development to develop the rest of their body, to learn to walk, to learn to communicate, to learn to do all these things and fend for themselves. And that's why the kids that survived were the result of pair bonding, where the mother would have had a father figure that would have collected resources for them. So this is the beginning of pair bonding, aka marriage. Marriage is the social construct to sort of reinforce that tie, that bond between two people, but it existed for far before we were actually even technically modern humans. So we were modern humans around 400,000 years ago. So several species back, we were already doing this, and modern humans have always pair bonded, and that is the strongest argument, in my opinion, for marriage between two people. We can't MGTOW out of there and say we are going to reject this thing that we've done the entire time we've been the species we have. Link number 2 below is just actually an example of other hominid species that also had this. So the reduction in eye tooth size, this is a common thing vegans try to bring up, saying we don't have fangs, so we're not carnivores or we're not omnivores. But fangs in humans and many other animals actually develop and exist due to fighting for territory and mates. So as humans became more dominant in pair bonding versus one male being an alpha and getting to impregnate all the females, the fangs reduced because they didn't need to fight each other. The fangs were for fighting other males, and that's generally what fangs are for in a lot of animals. So all the other primates don't have pair bonding to such a great degree. The only exception is gibbons. And as a rule, they all have longer fangs, and it's something that they use in the fights and posturing for this dominance that they display. And not something that a lot of MGTOW or men's rights activists actually talk about, because it actually goes counter to their ideas on this, but marriage increases longevity. That's the topic of link number 3 below, which was a very recent video I did on marriage and its health benefits. And I kind of go over some similar points. I talk about pair bonding in history. And this is really important because social structure, healthy children that have fully developed empathy, these are all factors that have come into place because of fatherhood. And these ideas of MGTOW men's rights activists who are for people abandoning, or at least men abandoning, the traditional marriage dynamic, when the issues they have with marriage are all solvable, as I've demonstrated. There are some injustices that are occurring in modern marriage, and we can fix them. But the ideas they're promulgating are going to have the same consequences, which are the things that feminists want to come about. So actually, without realizing it, the MGTOWs and the men's rights activists are pandering into the feminist ideas of separating men and women in society, eliminating the institution of marriage, which is foundational to a healthy society, because that time of kids being raised is the most important time for giving them a good basis in ethics and developing empathetic behavior that results in a healthier society, because everyone's growing up with the ability to empathize. So that undermining by these radical ideas is something that needs to be challenged and weeded out, because this is an important part of human society. It's been within the structure of society since the time that we started eating larger quantities of meat. So it is very much a paleo type approach, and yeah, I hope that just inspires some people to reconsider their position if they've been taking these positions before. That was my main reason to make this video and touch on this topic. Marriage is incredibly potent for increasing the lifespans of both men and women, and it's about ending the battle between the sexes, and it's about connecting with someone on that deep level so that you have someone that you can proceed through life with. So let me know what you think about this video in the comments below. Comments, criticisms, whatever it is you have to contribute, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care and embrace life without limits.